Hello, Pam.
Well, hello, Ellen. How nice to see you. How nice to have this get together.
Yes, it's wonderful. And I really wanted to welcome you. And I wanted to tell you that I was very inspired by our little chit chat in some Facebook group. I don't even remember which one it was anymore. And I was inspired enough to go look at your Facebook page and then your website. And I thought that your example of being bold no matter what you look like, which is really kind of your message, based on your specific situation, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, was something that lots of women especially, lots of people could use, but women especially, I find, are sometimes afraid to go on camera because they worry about how they look. And I just thought this would be a great example. So I'm going to start by reading the bio that you sent me.
Okay.
So that people know who you are, have an idea of who you are.
All right.
Pamela Fitros. I'm pronouncing that right, yes? Yes, Pamela Fitros?
Fitros, yeah.
Yes, okay. So here is a description of, this is what you write. The shiny bald head Pam adores comes from an autoimmune disorder called, oh boy, alopecia universalis?
Correct.
Okay, the rarest form of alopecia areata?
Yeah.
Okay. It attacks all body hair and prevents regrowth. She searched the internet and discovered large international communities of people with various forms of hair loss. About 2% of the world population manifests some symptoms of some form of alopecia areata at some point in their lives. That's about 5 million men, women, and children just in the United States. Pam wrote Boldly Bald Women after it became apparent she was the only openly bald female in her city. So where were the rest of the bald women? As her book reached the Amazon bestseller list, it became clear that bald women are out there and they crave stories about how other women cope with and rise above hair loss. Pam Fitros lives in Michigan with her husband. The two of them live with their 2 dogs and 2 sassy parakeets. She has 2 adult children and 2 delightful grandchildren. She has one radio podcast show called Boldly Bald Women, How to Survive and Thrive in a Hair-Obsessed World. One more thing, Pam says, bald is the new sexy.
Amen to that.
So one of the things I wanted to do, because it's so beautiful, is I wanted to show people your website. And I'm actually going to show it by sharing my screen. Here it is. This is your website. And I just wanted to introduce people to it. It's called boldlybaldwomen.com. And she has here her various blog posts and information, and you can sign up for her free guide called Getting Past the Emotional Pain of Female Hair Loss. So let's go back to seeing each other like this, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I thought that, like I said, I think the answers will be really valuable for a lot of people in many ways. So we talked about the condition that you have, this
alopecia universalis.
I have to look. So the question is at Boldly Bald Women, you help people deal with hair loss, but obviously there's your personal story there. So I'm interested in your journey.
You have to kind of be a little bit careful what you ask for in life. I always had a question about what would it be like to be bald. I saw Kelly Savalas and Yul Brynner and so many, and even now Bruce Willis. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, they're all men. And the only women that were bald were on Star Trek, and they were all aliens. So it was just kind of in the back of my head, what would it be like to be a bald woman? Well, I had ovarian cancer, and I am one of the very few women who survives that. 75% of the women. And not only did I not die, I wound up not having to have chemo or radiation. And for a moment there's this temporary second of, how am I going to know what it's like to be bald if I don't have to do chemo? And then I thought, Pamela Susan Fitros, you had best just say thank you, God, and shut your mouth. However, God has a very good humor. And 3 years later, I ended up with alopecia universalis. And alopecia areata is you start out with little spots on your head, a quarter-size round spot. A smooth scalp will show up someplace, and then it maybe grows back, and then another one shows someplace, and then that one maybe grows back. And it comes and it goes. It's a very fickle disorder. It's from the autoimmune system, and your body just thinks that your hair is a mortal and is trying really hard to save you from your own hair. And so it attacks the follicles, puts them in the sleep mode, ejects all the hair, and then doesn't let them grow back. It just stands guard around all the hair follicles. So when I lost my hair, I grinned because I thought, you asked for it, you got it, Toyota. But the thought was a lot more interesting than the reality, because you're spending time pulling it off your pillowcase, cleaning it out of the drains in your shower, and then there's this whole aspect of other people's reactions to the hair loss.
Right.
My sister, we had just lost my brother from a heart attack, a massive heart attack, and both of our parents are gone. So it's just my sister who are left. And she was so worried that this meant that I was going to die that she said, I can't look at your head. I can't look at your head. You have to cover your head. And I had a wig, but I hated it. It was so hot and itchy. And if I would give somebody a hug, you always had to watch out. What frames do they have? What kind of glasses frames do they have? Give them a hug. Are you going to pull back and your wig's going to stay on their glasses frames? Or what? And so I got very pulled back. I became very withdrawn. My sister said, I can't look. I said, I can't wear wigs anymore, Diane. I said, I can't do this. I just can't. Well, then you're going to have to wear hats. And I said, sister mine, if you want me to wear hats, you had best start making them. So by golly, she did. She's an expert crochet and knitter, and she found some patterns and knit me some really cool hats. But even those, it was too hot, and I would sweat, and I would be at work when I had the wig on, and I was so worried about hurting the people, or because I worked in a retirement home, I was concerned that perhaps they would think that I was dying. And I didn't want to distress them any, or perhaps they would think I had cancer, or perhaps it would trigger their own feelings of mortality. And, but they were noticing that I was pulling back. And one of the ladies came up to me and she said, Pam, you're not giving us hugs anymore. What's the matter with you? You don't look happy. What's the matter with you? And so this was in front of the coffee shop. There were a lot of women sitting there and a couple men. And I said, I have this wig, I've got alopecia, bald, and it's hot and it's itchy, and I'm afraid to give you hugs because my wig's going to come off or turn sideways, and I hate it. Well, you don't talk to residents like that. But I was just at the end of my wits. And she came up, she was about maybe 86 or 87, and she came up to me with her walker, ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. She got right up to my face. She whispered, so take the damn thing off. She didn't know, because she was so hard of hearing, that her whisper is permanently on loud. All the rest of the women in the coffee shop were nodding their heads up and down. Yes, get rid of it. Yes, get rid of it. We want our hugs. We don't want your hair. And the men were shaking their head. No, keep it away.
Interesting, yeah.
So I went home that night and I took my wig off. And I stopped wearing the hats that my sister had made me. My boss was not happy about that. I eventually got transferred to someplace else, and then it was a job I couldn't do, so I eventually just came home. And I thought, this is not right. My boss no longer working for him because he didn't like the way I looked. He said, now not only are you fat, but now you're bald.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
That was pretty intense. And he said, I really think you should resign. And I said, well, I need a couple of days to think about this. So home and talked to my husband and put my hand on his knee when he was ready to get up and go find him and knock his... But I thought, this is wrong. Why is it the case that women are supposed to hide when it's okay for a man to shave off his head? It's for a bald, fat man to saunter down the street and be about a thing and even be considered handsome. Mm-hmm. So why not us? What's the deal? Why not us? And so I looked around my city. Grand Rapids, Michigan is quite a... and I didn't see any other bald women there at all. And I got out the numbers and I said, there definitely are more bald women here. So I decided to find out where other bald women were. I went to a couple of online groups and eventually got applications for questionnaires, and people wanted to support this. So Boldly Bald Women got written, and I became the happiest little fat bald lady in the whole city. I have never worn a wig since then. I never intend to wear a wig ever again. And I love being bald. I love it.
Well, it's certainly easy.
More men
spend so much time with their hair, fussing and fiddling with it.
Exactly. And my husband says, do you have any idea how much money you save me every year? I figure it's got to be about $1,200.
So that's a wonderful story, Pam. And you actually covered the second question I was going to ask, which is how you went from being upset about it to feeling bold about it. That transformation, that transition is a pretty amazing story. And one of the reasons, like I said, that I thought that I'm interested in what you experienced is how this can apply to other people. But I was wondering if you could tell a story about someone else who's made that transition, maybe through your website or something that someone else who's made that transition from being upset about it to bold.
Well, you asked about, I'm going to back up here a minute. You asked about what the transition was. Why? How did I make that decision? It was very simple. I finally decided that I'm here to live my life story, not anybody else's. And that I need to live my own truth and not let somebody else determine what my truth is going to be. And when I finally got that straight, then the decision to actually go bald for the rest of my life was fairly easy. Yes, there have been a lot of women that I have spoken to. There was one woman whose father was in the Holocaust in Germany. He was in the concentration camps. Mm-hmm. And for them, their heads were shaved as dehumanizing, and and their catch-all was it's for lice, for head lice.
Right.
But it was for humiliation and dehumanization. And so when he saw his daughter bald, that brought all of that back. And he said, I can't look at you like this. And then she had the same reaction to that I did. Well, if I'm not acceptable the way I am, then I'm not acceptable, period.
Right.
And so I worked with her and talked with her, and we talked about living her own truth, and that even though her father had been through a lot in his lifetime, she was not responsible for his comfort. He was responsible for his comfort. And it was not necessary for her to change what she wanted to do in her life. He had to get used to the change or decide he didn't want to see her. And that when you change something in your life, people tend to do one of three things. Either they work really hard to get things back to the way they were, or they leave or they change. And when you change the dance steps, people bump into each other for quite a bit, but then after that, either you stop dancing or you smooth out the dance steps and you go again with something that works for both of you, that is harmonious. And that's what she did. She had a long talk with her father and told him exactly how she felt. It wasn't her fault that she had alopecia universalis, and she wanted him to love her the way she was. And it took him a while,
Right.
but she continued to go without her wig. And eventually he just gave her a big hug and said, "I'm so sorry, you're right."
So that's
Now,
very
does it
simple.
always work out that way? No. Sometimes people leave. Sometimes relationships break down. But it's, you know,
It's kind of interesting because that was such a reasonable reason, his experience. You could see why he would feel that way. In most cases, there is no reasonable reason for it. I mean, that was something that I could understand. But in many other cases, it doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. It's just a social convention. And it was interesting because you talked about that situation because I'm Jewish, and Orthodox Jewish women who are married cover their heads, and sometimes they just put a scarf on them, but some of them wear wigs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they have hair underneath the wig. They might cut it short for comfort, but they cover themselves like that. And that's meant to be for modesty. That's the same reason that Muslim women cover their heads, the same kind of concept. So I'm familiar with all of that. But, a traumatic experience like being in a concentration camp makes sense. As I said, in most cases, I just, it doesn't really seem to, we really should be able to adjust to this.
You would think, but for my boss to tell me now, not only are you fat, but you're bald, I took that to the CEO, and I said, "Wait a minute, I don't think this is right."
Well, it certainly doesn't sound legal to me.
Well, it's not legal for him to talk to me about being fat.
Right.
But it is, there's no protection for baldness.
Well, on the other hand, it's a disease, it's a disability, and so to me, I actually see it more the other way. I maybe being fat, could be for different reasons, but to me, the fact that you have this autoimmune disease, and to me, that's the more illegal issue that I can see.
He got his hands slapped big time, but I just, I didn't need to take that negative energy with me. So
Absolutely.
I just retired early and came home and wrote Boldly Bald Women and found a whole nother life plan. And eventually I saw him at action later, and I went up to him and shook his hand and said, "Thank you so much for being such a jerk. I have a wonderful life I found a new calling. Thank you."
Good thing to say.
Quite wonderful.
So I think this is clear from what you said, but what message or principle does what you do provide to women who haven't lost their hair? And for example, as I mentioned, I see lots of women who are afraid to show themselves on camera because they don't like the way they look, and they hide. Behind, and I teach people how to make PowerPoint slides. It's one of the things that I do. And so they hide behind slides, for example. And I think it applies in lots of situations, but just give me that overall message or principle that this applies to for women or even men who are upset about the way they look and therefore they don't want people to see them, especially online.
Ellen, the thing that I have come to understand is that our life is a gift. We're here for a reason. We may not know what it is, but it's our job to find out what it is. And we all have our story, our life story to live. So we can't live somebody else's life story, and we can't live our life story for somebody else. We are responsible for our own lives and to live our own truths. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if you're bald. I don't care if you're fat. I don't care if you have lost a limb or if you have a big blotch on your face. I don't care what it is. Is that your life is precious and there is something here that's important for you to do. And if you hide, then you're not living your life fully. If you think you're not good enough, you're kind of spitting in God's face because he created you and you're fine just the way you are. But you got to find that. You have to find that truth within yourself. And the first thing that you have to do is love yourself the way you are. If there's something that you don't like about yourself that you can change, do it. If you can't change it, find out how to love yourself. There's always wonderful stories that you can read that are uplifting about people who have something that some challenge in their life, some disability or some challenge, whether it's depression or bipolar disorder. It doesn't matter what it is. We all have something.
Well, I think your story is uplifting.
But what I found is when I go out there, well, thank you. What I have is that when I go out there full of confidence in myself, loving myself for who and what I am, accepting my flaws as I would accept somebody else's flaws, as I would love somebody else if they didn't have a limb, whatever. The more confidence I have in myself, the more people don't see me. Just as a bald woman, they look into me. There's a story about people seeing, the 10, where do you rate on the 1 to 10 scale? There's a story about, someone told me about, they look at women and the first thing they do is see 1 to 10, where are you? But once the woman opens her mouth, it can go from a 10 physically down to a 1 personality-wise, manner-wise, everything else-wise. And so I don't worry about the 1 to 10 scale anymore because I know that's just your first impression.
Right.
If you stick around long enough, you're going to find I'm a pretty cool person to know. If you don't stick around long enough, you're lost. Not mine. So love yourself the way you would love somebody else. That's my, and then take whatever measures you need to take to do what you can do with yourself to make yourself feel comfortable, but for you, not for somebody else's standards.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, did you ever watch the movie Shallow Hal?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good example of that, where he's looking at women only on their surface level, and this woman puts a kind of, I guess you would call it a spell on him or something, so that he sees this very obese woman as very thin, and he just, and so he overlooks the outside and then sees what's inside. And I wanted to show you something else, because I have an apple tree outside, and the apples that are on the tree are delicious, but they don't look very good. So I don't know if you can see it, but
yes,
nuts on it and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's wonderful. It's so juicy and so delicious. I just picked it this morning. And I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you know Diane Conklin.
No.
Have you heard of Periscope? It's a new live video thing. So she did a Periscope, and the title of it was, I'm whatever age she is, 50-something, I'd say, and I have a zit. And that was the title she put in there. That had a lot of attention. So we all come on and watch her, and she shows the zit, and it was like, I never would have even noticed it, But she was talking about that whole thing about, you can't let something like that keep you off the screen. You just go ahead and you.
I haven't. It's right over here someplace. It's there. Where is it over here? It doesn't matter. I don't care where it is.
Yeah. I still get zits every once in a while too.
You know what's really cool about being bald? None of those middle-aged hairs that you get that are goat beard hairs.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
None. They're all gone. I love it. I love it.
Well, anyway, thank you so much. I wanted to tell you that I think you're really inspiring and a great example for women who feel like they have to hide even though they're not bald, and they might look just fine, but they worry about this little thing and that little thing. And I think they not only hide from doing video, but they just hide from life in many ways, and they don't share the knowledge they have and the gifts they have with others, so they're really not giving what they could give to the world because of this fear, which is really irrational.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're anytime.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.